So whom is our next item. I will try to give you some examples and you will see how who replaces subjects and is put in the place of the subject, and whom is used in the place of the objects. So I have 4 examples for you. We'll start with 2 examples and you have to say is it who or whom and why and how we do that or we come to that. So let's take 2 examples on the board. The doctor is my uncle. That's the idea. If you want to give more information and you want to insert or to put there a relative clause, I could say, for example, the doctor who or whom visited me is my uncle. In the second example, I have the doctor who or whom I visited is my uncle. So with the first example, shall I use who or whom? So the clause there is who or whom visited me. So normally you have the verb is visited me. But who did the action of visiting? Is it me? No, I am the object. Someone visited me, so I need the subject. So I should say the doctor who visited me is my uncle. And in the second example, I have to use whom, of course, but why? Because you have the clause who or whom. I visited. Visit is the verb. Who did the action? It's me. I visited. So I is a subject. I am the one, the person that did action. So I need object. I visited. So I have to use whom. So I have to say the doctor whom I visited is my uncle. Let's take another example to make it clear for you. I have the driver is careless. That's the idea, that's the message I want to communicate. You want to use a relative clause and pronoun to give more information about the noun, the driver. I need to insert a relative clause there. So I would say, for example, but I have 2 ways. The driver who or whom called me is careless. Or the second example, the driver who or whom I called is careless. So let's start with the first example and you have to say is it who or whom and why. So the first one is the driver who whom called me is careless. We have the relative clause who or whom called me. The verb is call. Me is object. But who did the action of calling? I need a subject. There, normally we don't have it. But we agreed that who is replacing the subject, not the object. So I have to use who. So the right answer is the driver who called me is careless. But in the second example, it's different. I have the driver who or whom I called. The verb is call. Who did the action? It's me. I called the driver. So I called, I have a subject I, and I have the verb, and so I need object, and the object is whom. Whom refers to the object driver. So the first example we say the driver who called me is careless. The second example we say the driver whom I called is careless. So who replaces the subject and whom replaces the object. You see, so it depends on your example. If you have the subject and you have the verb, then you should use whom. If you have a verb and the object, then it means you have to use who, not whom. So quick, we'll go to when and where, and I'm sure every one of you know where goes for or used for place, and when is used for time or a period of time. So let's start with where and then we go to when. So for where, we use it for place. Let's say, for example, a simple example, Casablanca is the biggest city in Morocco. We all know Casablanca, but sometimes if you are speaking with someone who is a foreigner, or maybe sometimes you want to give just a personal information about Casablanca. So you see, Casablanca is the biggest city in Morocco, and you want to give more information about the place Casablanca. You cannot use who or whom because they are used for people. You cannot use which because it is used for things. Whose is used for possession. So Casablanca is place. I could say Casablanca, where my grandma was born, is the biggest city in Morocco. The relative clause is where my grandma was born. Another example with, let's say just Casablanca, I could use it at the end and I would say I will visit Casablanca where my grandma was born. That's in brief how we use where. When is the same thing, but we use it for time. Let's say, for example, I hate the day when I met you. Or you could say, I love the day when I met you. The day is time, so we used when to give more information about that day. Let's take another example away from emotions and love or hate. Say Ramadan is a month. This sentence is not clear. You have to give us more information because it's not enough to say Ramadan is month, but Ramadan is time. So you see, Ramadan is month when Muslim people fast from sunrise to sunset. So where we use it for place and when we use it for time. Before we finish this part, I have to inform you and draw your attention to a very confusing area about which and where, because sometimes you need to use which, and this is the most confusing part for some students, is sometimes you need to use which even if you are talking about the place. But how? To make it clear, let's take two examples there. For example, I visited Paris where my father works. So here I used where because I'm talking about the place. I refer to a place or location where my father works. But with the second example there, I say I will visit Paris, which is the capital of France. We are talking about Paris, but why in the first example we used where, but in the second example we used which? The answer is, the first one we used where because we are talking about the place or Paris as a place, but in the second example, if you pay attention, we are not talking about Paris, we are describing Paris. So when you are describing a place, which is the capital of France, which is very huge, which is very beautiful, you give information. Or maybe you are talking about an activity you did there, then you have to use which, not where. This is, I think, the most confusing area when it comes to where and which.